Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Making Artistic Sense. Where's the money? Everybody, if you could come a little bit closer. We're all friends, and also there's going to be a lot of questions, and we have Spring walking around with a mic later, and it's going to be easier for her to move the distances if you're sitting closer together. So we are NAPAMA, the North American Artists, Managers, and Agents. This is part of our educational series, Making Artistic Sense. We do this at every conference, as well as our webinar series. I'm Louisa Corman from Entourage Talents. I'm also the chair of the Professional Development Committee and the vice president of the organization. These are our speakers, but before we start, I would like to tell you a little bit about our organization. We are a community of artists, managers, and self-represented artists, but we also invite presenters to join the organization. We do a lot of advocacy, a lot of education, a lot of mentoring and peer coaching, and it's very, very valuable, especially for those who recently entered the industry. We've heard a lot about people having sort of problems navigating APAP. We are very, very helpful with that because we pride ourselves in sort of taking you by the hand and answering every question that you may have. We have an annual retreat. There are postcards on the tables here. It's going to be at the Fox Tucson in May? End of May.
End of May.
At which we have a lot of educational sessions and just there's a lot of research sharing, resource sharing that we do. Just talking about the state of the industry, and it's a great community organization. We also have a lot of membership benefits. Just check out the website. It's not expensive to join, and it's just generally a great resource for everybody. So let's start introducing you to our panel. Steve Martin is a founder of Paladin Artists and an agent. He has represented everyone under the sun. Most recently, two of his biggest artists are David Gilmour and Dream Theater. We like him. He just sits a little bit apart because he's sick and he doesn't want to speak through a mask.
I think it's age discrimination that you want agents sitting further away from everybody else, but I'll accept it. It's okay.
Ron DeStefano of Epic Arts Management. He is our guru and very, very anal when it comes to contracts, contracts, insurance, and every tips and tricks you want when it comes to saving money and budgeting. Some of you may have seen him during the previous conferences that we've done last year. And
I feel very seen and very triggered.
You are a great resource, and many people here know that. And Tara Bailey, founder and owner and agent at Bailiwick, artist booking? Sorry. Tara is an artist agent for theater for young audiences, and she knows a lot about budgeting because she tours Lightwire, which is a very complicated touring production. So let's start. Before we start, could you raise your hand if you are a self-represented artist in the area? Okay. I figured. Agent managers. Okay. Presenters. All right. So we got a pretty balanced crowd here. So let's start. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. So a lot of us have gone through quite a difficult year, as you know. So I just wanted to start off with one question for each of you. I'm just going to go from left to right here. Steve, what kind of changes have you seen in the past 5 years and in the past year with regards to touring costs as well as ticket sales?
They've both gone up a great deal, and one can be a function of the other. Tour costs have gone up greatly since COVID, when so many people were out of work, and then trucking companies, tour managers, crews, and had 2 years without income, and we're trying to make some of that back, some of that lost money. Ticket sales, ticket prices go up commensurately with the cost, because a lot of groups pre-COVID would do a budget beforehand, but some would be lax about doing a budget beforehand and just would assume the guarantees would cover everything and then get out on the road and go, oh, we're short 50 grand. We're not going to sell that much merch. So it's become a more complex issue to keep an eye on ahead of time before the artists go out and pencil it out in detail.
I found two kinds of things that have changed for our company dramatically in the last 5 years. Just to give you a little bit of context, I entered this industry as a self-represented artist back in 2010, I think was my first APAP. Then we started producing concerts for any venue to purchase. So I was a producer at that point, and then we became an agency in 2018 and started actively selling not just shows that we produced, but other shows. So I have kind of an interesting, have worn many of the hats in this industry. And we have seen a lot of changes in terms of the venue, the buyer, let's say, passing more of the responsibility and liability onto the artist or the producing entity, whether that be how much money are you spending on your own personal social media to promote this show, even though this is a guarantee show and you have no back-end participation in the results of the ticket sales. So even though you have a flat fee as an artist, asking questions like, how much of your own money have you spent to make this go well? Passing insurance requirements and liability requirements onto the artist or producing entity. Please show us your certificate of insurance. We didn't see that much of that in 2019 and 2020, but now pretty much 50% of our contracts have a stipulation that you must provide liability insurance, so that responsibility is now being shared. The other topic that I have seen change dramatically in the last, I'd say 3 years is, and this is more of my producer hat, it's difficult to find artists who want to stop what they're doing and sing. I know that sounds so goofy, but someone who lives in New York City and goes out and has auditions and hires singers, we get a lot more, no, I'd rather do my waiting tables job than go to Kansas and sing. Which was something that we never really dealt with. People were more interested, even though the money is commensurate, at least with their waiting tables jobs, which are very remunerative in New York City. But now people are just like, I don't want to deal with the airports. I don't want to deal with the drama. I'd rather not sing. So we're having a more difficult time finding employees to perform our shows, which is kind of wild.
That is wild. In addition to the obvious already stated by Steve and Ron, and specifically coming through the TYA lens, we're seeing people take less risk on adventuresome work. Presenters or audiences, rather, I should say, are leaning to more commercial style work instead of going out and finding something creative and inspiring. They're leaning on what they know. In addition to that, we're seeing presenters who may have a budget to present, say, 10 family shows a year because of these increased costs, only doing 8, right? So it's trickling down in different ways. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we cope with that? Because one of the main things that we can't do is just, pay every artist less.
Do your homework ahead of time. Before you confirm a date, make sure it adds up. And insurance is an excellent point, because what should have been a firm thing for a firm commitment to any tour beforehand, pre-COVID, we relied on the venue's insurance. Some, depending on the scale of the group, would have insurance if you were an arena tour or something like that. But many of the smaller groups and clubs and PACs would just cross their fingers and pray to a certain extent. But it's a big factor, and it's become a significant cost.
I would agree with that, and that homework and preparation. So if you're having trouble finding employees to sing shows, have more auditions, have more people lined up. If you are expecting insurance requests, purchase an annual policy as opposed to buying all these day of policies that are more expensive, these special event insurance policies. Just knowing that this is the market, preparation and homework can solve a lot of the problems.
I actually know, Ron, that you have a
an anecdote about your homework, no homework, your insurance quirk that you have. Do you mind sharing that?
Oh my gosh.
When your employees were bitten on the road?
Oh.
Stories from the road.
I wasn't
this could go
ready
on
for
a
this
while.
this early in the day. How many of you were at the Making Artistic Sense panel at either Arts Midwest or WA? You've heard this story. Apologies. I'm going to repeat it, and I might change some of the details. For any people who are touring artists or producers, there is a question about the health and safety of your team as you are traveling. The question of workers' comp sometimes gets raised. Is your artistic organization using 1099 workers or using W-2 workers? How are you classifying your team? Interestingly enough, this is not your choice, how you are classifying your team. The government, the Department of Labor, your state, your county, what have you, are the ones who ultimately get to decide whether or not the people who work with you and for you are your employees or your contractors. And generally speaking, the world really wants them to be your employees. They want you to be taking payroll taxes out. They want to be seeing the money. And there are this whole list of rules. Do you tell them what to wear? Do you tell them what order to sing the songs in? Do you tell them what time they have to be at the theater? If too many of these questions are yes, they're your employees, whether you like it or not. And employees are technically supposed to be covered by workers' compensation insurance of some kind. We run our businesses on W-2 for that reason, and it never has been an issue. Who cares? Nothing ever happens. This past year, we had a group go to Kansas, and one day one of the guys woke up in the hotel. It was the day of the show, and he had pink eye, which happens. So he decided, instead of taking the company car, which is right there and available for him, he decided to walk to the nearest urgent care to get his treatment for pink eye. On the way to the urgent care, he was bitten by rabid dogs. Rabid question mark. He was bitten by
Cannot make
dogs
this up.
of unknown origin, and the police were unable to find the dogs. And so everyone in this city in Kansas said, the protocol is you now need to get rabies treatments. Rabies treatments cost $9,000. And thank heavens we had workers' comp insurance for this employee, because as an employer, my only responsibility was to say, here's the number you call, and it's no longer my responsibility. I am here for you empathically and emotionally, but the rest of it is somebody else's job. But if I were employing him as an independent contractor, which I should never have been doing, I would have had to pay that bill because he is my responsibility. And if I didn't pay the bill, he could have gone to the Department of Labor and claimed improper labor classification. That was kind of a sidebar. But anyway, there's just something to keep in the back of your head of your employee classification and all that kind of stuff. Again, preparation and how are you structuring your business. Sorry for the story for those who heard it before.
Great story.
I did ask. So where else do you think that you could save money when you make your budget?
Where can I save money? I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, obviously, you know, budgeting and keeping contingency within your budget, you know, that won't save you money, but, you know, knowing that things will pop up. Yeah, trying to be conscientious about your logistics. That's where we are able to save dollars on the road.
I would say, you know, there are so many brass tacks ways of constructing a budget for a show. Are you buying your airline tickets approximately 45 days before, especially for domestic travel? You know, if you buy your flight tickets too early, they're too expensive. If you buy them too late, they're too expensive. But there's that magical travel agent 45 days early, preferably on a Tuesday, that people have talked about for years, where you can't get the best flights. Are you using Google Flights? Are you having your airline branded credit cards that are in the name of one of your traveling entertainers so you get free luggage on all of these airlines? You know, that exchange of a $99 Delta card gets you 6 free bags. You know, that's worth its weight in gold when you're traveling a lot. Are you using Expedia and other tools to find the cheapest hotels in the area. You know, you can use those filters so beautifully. You know, make sure the rating is anything over 8 within, 50 miles of the venue, and you'll find some $100 hotel versus a $250 hotel in downtown? Are you talking to presenters about a possible hotel buyout that you can then use to purchase an Airbnb that's way cheaper than the hotels that they would have purchased? Are you using hotels that have complimentary breakfast to save money on per diem? Are you asking for free dinner or a catered meal at the venue in conjunction with your show, which so many presenters are willing to do, which saves money? Again, just clicking off these boxes of where can I shave off the dollars? Do you have gold memberships at all of the various car rental companies for your employees? Are you using these points and accruing them and getting coupons for free rentals? It's kind of a full-time job to save this money. Sorry. I'm so sorry. He's like holding his head like this. I can't do it all. My family comes from a travel agency background. And so this has been
Clearly.
my world that I've known about since I've been young, is like, how can you save people money? I love to use a coupon. My co-agent Adam is there in the back, and he knows me. I'll be the guy who goes to CVS, and it's like, they paid me to take this stuff out of the store. I used 7 coupons today. That's how you structure a well-budgeted tour. You just shave off all those dollars, and you'd be surprised that that budget, is less $1,000 for a 3-day show because you just shaved off all that money. Those are just some quickies.
Are you a NAPAMA member and take advantage of the Hertz discount that we offer? Yes. For example.
Yeah, member of NAPAMA. You get a Hertz
In the
discount.
hotel.
We have a Drury Lane hotel discount.
Drury Lane Hotel?
A number of different discounts. Insurance connections, lawyer discounts. There's lots of great NAPAMA discounts if you become a member.
Very subtle. We're being very subtle today.
Those are great answers. We usually just take the Andy Summers approach and make 6 people sleep in one room. And 8 people in a van, 2 cups of ramen during the day.
You say that, interestingly enough, that was a huge change in our company in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
No one will share a hotel room anymore. So that really changed our budget, and we had to find different hotels, or 2-bedroom suites that some of these hotels offer that are cheaper than 2 rooms.
You got to work with less prima donnas. That's what it is.
Talent costs.
Be hungry to get out there. He gets an entire floor of the hotel.
So when it comes to negotiations, where are there potential areas that you could negotiate?
I'm sorry, say again?
If you negotiate an offer, where are there potential areas where you can get some money out of a presenter or a promoter?
Just ticked off a lot of the boxes when it comes to catering, whether the local venues have deals with hotels that they don't necessarily, you have to ask. They don't necessarily offer them, but you have to ask. If you know people in the town, to find where good deals are. But there's going to be stuff in the budget that you don't plan for that just comes out of nowhere. The truck breaks down, the bus breaks down, somebody gets sick, you have to replace them. It's the unforeseen stuff that you can't know what's coming.
Yeah, I would say in the negotiating process, if you're an artist or producer who's doing flat fee guarantees, there are fewer ways to kind of wiggle around. But if it's something that is a door deal or something that involves documented expenses or a back-end participation situation where you get a fee that's lower than you want, but at the end, if you achieved a certain amount of gross ticket sales, you get a piece of that as the artist. Usually there's a piece of the contract that's going to say less documented expenses on the buyer's part. Sometimes buyers like to be a little bit obscure about what those expenses are. There might be a box that says, like, here are some of the ideas of our documented expenses, electricity and insurance and lobby staff and blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, you can get them to articulate all of that information, including, most importantly, we have found, backline costs. Most artist tech writers are the dream backline. It lists the most expensive and gorgeous drum kit that has like mother of pearl inlaid things and drum thrones that are adjustable and motorized, what have you. You all know that if you were paying the bill, you'd be fine with the jazz kit from the dirty club down the street if it put $800 more in your pocket. So it's very important if you have anything negotiating a contract that involves your participation in this gross ticket sales, less documented expenses, have them really articulate at the end, or not at the end. We actually do it in the contracts that say, on top of portions of their tech rider, due to back-end participation, please confirm with artist these needs prior to purchase, and that's in the hospitality section, so they're not getting the steak, they're happy with the chicken. It's in the backline area. So we're just getting those costs down, getting more money in the artist's pocket. So that's a negotiating point.
And I think to consider each deal is really unique. I don't think, I mean, without getting into the weeds, everybody comes at it differently, and every relationship you have with the agent or a presenter or an artist is different. So I think kind of thinking about it in a unique space and negotiating it on a personal level is how I approach things.
Okay.
Oh, and one more thing, just to piggyback on what you said.
He's in the weeds.
Merchandise splits are not necessarily non-negotiable. When you ask the venue and they say it's 80-20 or 90-10, it can be a conversation. So that's a negotiating point that you mentioned earlier.
And it depends on, are they supplying a seller, or you selling, and things like that, yeah.
Bring your mom and save the money on the seller.
Have you been doing a lot of like pre-show engagement sort of things, or VIP ticketing that you can maybe get some additional revenue for your artists for? Any of you?
Well, I can say that a lot of the education and family work that we do it includes pre-show engagement or workshops. That's really important within the family and education side. Yeah, that's where we kind of focus on that sort of thing.
Our company does a lot of work in the Northwest. We go to the Arts Northwest Regional Conference as well as the Montana State Conference that most of you probably doesn't know exists, but there's a lovely touring market in the state of Montana. Nearly all of those venues to get grant money require some sort of outreach, engagement, community, school, something in the community to make the show happen. So on onboarding artists in our company, you have to have something to offer. And usually we offer it gratis with an evening, with a full booked concert. It comes with one outreach program with most of our artists.
So that's not additional money for your artists?
Unless they want to add it after the contract is negotiated, then it's usually a stipend of some kind, $100 a person, $150 a person to add something like that on. Not VIP, I'm talking like educational outreach type of thing. So that's not really a money generator for our teams. But yeah, that's usually something we have to include to work in those areas.
Maybe you should start.
Maybe we should.
Yeah, we charge for our workshops, absolutely.
How about VIP ticketing?
VIP is an important component for a lot of artists, even younger ones playing clubs. We have a client called Pineapple Thief, which nobody except their agent has ever heard of, sitting out there. And they play 500 to 700 seat clubs, but fans will line up for autographs and signed posters. And at the end of the night, they'll make an extra $1,000, $2,000, which on their scale, another $10,000, $15,000 a week adds up quite a bit. As you scale up to theaters, it becomes an important component. The fight we usually have is to battle the fees that the venue or promoter will want to tack on against that. If prior to the show, a band is going to do a meet and greet and a photo, the venue will want to charge you $1,000 for security. And we're like, we don't need 5 guys for security for an audience that's 55 years old. They're not coming in to trash anything, okay? There'll be 50 people. They're going to take a photo and get out. We'll give you $200 for somebody to stand there. But that is usually the battle between them. But it's a significant source of added income. And then you can do ticketing packages. There's a zillion things to do.
So
I don't know if you've ever worked at a Florida adult community, but until you've been pawed by someone the same age of your grandmother, you really haven't lived.
So so when you do come up with those VIP experiences, who organizes that in advance?
Yes, it has to be organized and negotiated in advance. We have some clients, they'll come cook you lunch, if you pay them enough money.
And that is organized by the touring manager, or who organizes that?
Deals are done by the agent ahead of time and then facilitated by the tour manager, yes.
So there's no like third-party vendor who does that for you?
Occasionally there are, yeah, sometimes there are. But only on the bigger tours, theater, arena tours.
And so at settlement, how do you differentiate what money came in for the VIP ticketing or the additional revenue that came in, and what was just the general revenue? Because, you know, you need to know how exactly you get them.
Accounting.
So somebody on the road
there are
needs to know
clear
math.
line items where these are.
So just for everybody, somebody on the road really needs to know math.
Generally helpful, yes.
I mean, you know, it is important. And another math just note that we've talked about a lot is we need to be really careful in budgeting, generally speaking. I'm getting off topic here, it's just something that just came to mind, is with additional state taxes, out-of-state entertainer tax. That is something that came up last year a lot.
Can I chat about that for 1 second?
I
Just
was
since
going
we're
to
on it.
ask you.
You brought it up. It's your fault. So this is something that's sort of been my soapbox, and I've mentioned it at all the regional conferences recently. And it's just evaluating, and this is generally for agents, not artists. How are you receiving payments for your artists, and how are you processing them? Who are payees on checks? Why is this all important? Well, we are seeing every year additional states joining the club that withhold non-resident entertainer tax withholding from artist payments. California, 9%, Connecticut, 4%, North Carolina, X%, Minnesota, Wisconsin. These states, if you don't live in them, if you book a $10,000 job, when you get that check at the end of the gig, it's going to be less this tax. And you're like, I don't even live here. Why are they taking money? It's just what they do. And at the end of the year, whoever's EIN or Social Security number is connected to that payment can then submit a tax return to the state and possibly recoup some of that money. But we have a fundamental problem. And that is, if we do things what I call the old school way, which is agent receives first payment in agent's name on check, deposits, holds in escrow, artist gets balance payment at venue, agent releases payment to artist, less commission. Then we have a situation where if you haven't done it a certain way and told the venue in advance, the agency's EIN is connected to the first payment, and the artist's Social Security number, EIN, is connected to the second payment. So when it comes time to recover that money, the state governments are wildly confused as to who got paid and how and what. So our agency followed a trend that was established, I think, in 2019, where we put in our contracts, making it very clear to every venue that our agency is not the beneficial owner of any of this income. We do not give any venues any of our tax information as an agency. They never receive our W-9s. We give them the artist's W-9 out of the gate and say, and I have gotten factual proof on this, the IRS does not care whose name is on the check. They care who is designated as the beneficial owner of the income. So if we all agree that Joe Schmo's Magic Show really owns all $10,000 of this, and it's not $8,500 is his and $1,500 is our agency's, if we lay that ground rule out at the beginning, then it doesn't matter that even both checks came to Epic Arts Management. When it comes to end of year tax accounting, they can send that 1099 for the full $10,000 to the artist because it's all their money. And if the artist so cares, they can send a 1099 to us, the agency, for the $1,500 because we work for them. We don't work for the venue. So the chain of labor actually is venue, artist, agent, even though the payments go venue, agent, artist. The IRS has approved all of this, and it's totally fine, and they actually do it a lot for foreign artists. But this is a very important thing to save money as an artist or even as an agent, because if we were not to do it in that way, at the end of the year, the agency would have to submit a tax return to these various states, and the artist would have to submit a tax return to these various states, and we'd all have to figure out whose money was whose and split it up. It's nigh impossible. So we've just taken ourselves completely out of the payment equation. That's sort of complicated. If you want more information about it, you can find me after, whatever, but it's called the pass-through payment system, and it's just something we totally have adapted from top to bottom.
And just so anybody knows, if you are a member of NAPAMA, there is resources available to you about which states charge which tax, thanks to a few of our members who have done a detailed state-by-state sort of breakdown of what you should expect.
Thank you, Tara. I think it might be time for questions. We've already covered a lot of ground. So if you want to raise your hand, Spring over there has the mic. I see one in the back. Sorry, I jumped that on you, Spring.
And Kevin's on the other side.
Hi, my name is Gary. Thank you very much for the session this morning. This is our first APAP, and it's phenomenal. So thank you, everyone, for being so supportive. Ron, love the comments about the liability insurance and the very funny story. I'm presuming because with your agency, you produce shows as well as artists that you obviously don't look after directly or produce. So is everything you're talking about just for your own produced shows, for those W-2s, or even if you're representing another act from another agency, that you're also doing W-2s as well?
For artists that we represent, they're not on our payroll at all. So they, only the artists that we created and produced, those are our W-2 employees. The other artists, sort of based on that state tax conversation I just had, are neither employees nor independent contractors for us. We are their independent contractors. So it's the other direction. So I know you well. Gary is actually someone who we partner with for cruises. He has a side hustle as a brilliant cruise agent. And I know your agency runs it so you receive payments from the cruise lines, and then you pay out the artists on 10. Well, actually, it's a London-based company. This is now getting very confusing and complicated. But if he were a domestic company, he would then 1099 the artist, because that's the way many cruise agents do it. We do it totally the opposite direction, where the artist is a 1099 contractor for the venue, and then we work for the artist.
Okay. Mojo.
Hi, thank you for your comments. I have a question for Ron and the rest of the panel members about the state withholding taxes. I'm not sure if we are unique, but there are certain states who, in our experience, play the war of attrition. And when you go to file for your refund, they find technicalities to refuse your refund. And one state in particular has a pattern of returning your request for refund 3 times at least. And in our case, I was required, their requirement before they would release it was that I had to show up at a state office and show my original Social Security card and birth certificate because they couldn't prove who I was. Obviously, after 3 times, the accounting expense exceeded the return, and we gave up, and they kept the money. So I'm just wondering, has anyone else had that experience? How do you deal with it?
I want Ron to answer that question. I just want to ask what state that is so we can all avoid it.
I'm not talking about California.
Yes, California. And I was going to talk about California. It's funny you say that. So California's tricky. Hey, it's California. And they have the highest state tax withholding out of any state in the nation. We avoid a lot of those, well, our artists, we don't avoid anything. Our artists avoid a lot of those problems by filling out that beautiful, I think it's a 542B form, I'm making up that number, but it's something close to that, where you send that into the venue at least 30 days or something prior to your show, and you can show your documented expenses. I have or am going to spend this much on airfare, agent commission, marketing, bakadakada. And in the eyes of California, you can reduce your taxable income before the show even happens, and it'll tax you at the most, I think, 50% of what they were previously going to tax you. So it becomes a much less painful experience. I don't know that we've had artists that have encountered that much trouble, but it is a bit of a hassle in all of these states to try to recoup some or all of that money. I'm sorry you went through it. It might be the fact that you used the professional name Mojo that had something to do with it.
Ouch.
We have a non-tax question here.
Non-taxable question. This is a simple one. Rule of thumb, if there is any, you mentioned earlier about contingency, putting that in. Do you have suggestions on the percent of contingency you think you should hit? I mean, I know it'll be different in numbers because of whatever the fees are, or the tour, whether it's 1 day or 20 days. But what kind of percent should you maybe allow in your budget for contingency?
By contingency, you mean like
I build usually 20%. Yeah, a 20% contingency.
like the poop hits the fan number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that changes with the budget, right? Like
You said, so Tara said 20%?
Yeah.
I think 20% is a good number.
I think
I
that's
usually figure 10, 15%, depending on the scale and
Yeah.
the length of the tour. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a brief anecdote about contingency budgets, I just worked on a tour and we actually had to spend all of it, so we really needed that contingency budget.
Yeah. Wow.
So have one.
Hello, friends.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, everybody. So question about the taxes, like Ron, I know, and there are so many organizations, they don't pay deposits at all, right? That's just the presenter's policy. When you're in those states with the withholding tax, and let's use California since it's our favorite state. If they're going to deduct 9% and all the money's going to the artist, does the artist then say, hey, Ron, you were going to deduct 9% from your 15% commission as well? Do you agree to that? Do you not agree to that?
It's just the way we do it because we're just really nice and those kind of people.
We know that.
We deduct off of the money they actually receive, not
Right.
the gross that was on. I mean, and for the agency, what's 15% of a few $100s?
Right,
It's
right.
much less meaningful to us than it is to the artist. So we just say what money was on the actual check, and we'll commission that.
Right, and that's what we do as well. It's you're commissioning the artist receivable rather than what the original documentation was. But I was just curious how,
Yeah.
if anybody handles that differently, how they handle it because of how the artist has to file tax returns, et cetera.
And I would say that allows me to make a quick follow-up. The last piece of that pass-through payment conversation that I opened up here, 50%-ish of the venues that we're currently working with, especially municipalities, universities who have big old accounting departments and don't understand the concept of pass-through payments and don't want to have a conversation about it. For them, we do direct-to-artist payments and have all the payments sent to the artist, and then we just invoice the artist for commission. Because the last thing we want is for any of these venues to have our agency W-9. So that's how we deal with that. And so that goes to your kind of thing on the receivable money. It very often happens in a state like a California university presenter or whatever. We'll have to ask the artist, what check did you receive? Even for first payments and deposits. How much money did you receive? And then the invoice will be adjusted.
And actually, that sort of speaks to the trust that you have with your artists. We do a lot of that direct to the artist and then settle up between the artist and myself. And I've, knock on wood, never had a problem recouping that money, my commission, but because there's trust within that relationship.
And I do want to add one more reason to this idea of sort of upending the apple cart on payments. Remember that SVOG grant, that Save Our Stages fund that we all went through in 2020, whatever? Remember that they looked at our tax returns and they were looking for income that hit your checking account? so many of our artists were able to get 100% of the grant that they were entitled to, as opposed to 85% of the grant that they were entitled to, because their tax records matched up to the contracting, and their Social Security numbers matched up with the gross fees, and it didn't show that they made 85% of their income. They made 100% of their income, so they actually received more money from the government in 2021 because of the way we do these payments.
That's a lucky break.
All right. I'm going to add one as I'm walking over to my next person, Karen Kennedy. You're in line. I just wanted to piggyback really quickly on the idea of first payments, and that not every presenter is able to do those within the structures or their systems that they have. We've actually had a lot of luck since the pandemic, inspired by the Dance Managers Collective, who are really pushing this conversation of changing the language from deposit to first payment. In our negotiations and in our contracts, we try and have it be non-negotiable. We try to have it be tied to deliverables, because for several university presenters, they cannot write a first payment for something that has not had something happen, right? That's their justification of why they need to do it once the performance has happened. But if you're providing them with a study guide, you're providing them with a tech writer, with a planning meeting, sometimes those deliverables are enough for them to say, okay, we'll release the check. Granted, I work in youth and family. It's a much smaller fee range that we're talking about, but it is something that helps get more money in our artist pocket.
We're in the same world. We have eliminated the word deposit completely from our language and contract, and we only use the word first payment because, legally speaking, a deposit can't be spent on anything. It has to sit in a savings account in escrow. You are not allowed to touch it legally until the show is over. If you call it a first payment and have a conversation about it with the presenter and have an item in your contract that says this first payment, as soon as it hits our bank account, is going to be spent on possibly non-refundable travel. And in the event of a cancellation, including a force majeure cancellation, we may not be able to return some of this first payment. It's there on paper. The conversation has been had, and 95% of our presenters understand that, and it's on paper. But deposit is a bad word in our company and has been for many years.
And you've done the work, right? As an agent, from that perspective, you've done the work. You've planned the gig. You've provided all of the information. So that deposit isn't really a deposit. It is, payment for work done.
So generally speaking, let's just say, even if you call it a deposit and you have a cancellation, what is your cancellation policy? Do you try to return the deposit?
It depends on the kind of cancellation. If the cancellation is force majeure, act of God, weather, impediment of airline, then we have a huge force majeure paragraph that says this happens, this happens, this happens, and this happens. And there's all kinds of rules. Did they get to the venue and then it was canceled? Are they still at home when it was canceled? There's all kind of different percentages and conversations about that. If it's the artist's fault, all that money goes back. And I'm not even saying artist's fault in terms of a death of a family member. That's force majeure. I'm talking about I accepted a better job. That kind of conversation is you better give all that money back and you better give it back fast. So
we've been seeing a lot of cancellation over the last year, and it's not been great. Steve, do you want to speak to that?
A lot of cancellation?
People wanting to cancel mainly.
Well, it's a very interesting concept that you look at it as first payment as opposed to deposit, which we haven't done. But we're going to think about this now. Because generally speaking, in our world, we're dealing with promoters, Live Nation, AEG, or as many independent promoters as they are. And we have to treat that money, as you suggested, as sacrosanct. And if an artist, especially foreign artists, need money, advance $25,000 for airfare or production, get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, we need permission to release that money because it's not our money. And it's not the band's money, the client's money. And most of the time it's fine. But you cross your fingers that something doesn't go wrong that is on the artist's side. And keep yourself out of the crossfire by getting that permission. It'd be interesting to explore the first payment concept. I'm not sure, as you're right, if the artist just decides he or she doesn't want to get out of bed that day to walk down to the venue, and the presenter has advanced $50,000 toward this, could be a problem. That's when the lawyers are on speed dial and the whole thing goes down the tubes. But it's a very interesting concept. As far as a lot of cancellations, most of the time it's the promoters or producers wanting to bail because they're at 25% ticket sales 2 days out. And that's a problem because contracts will take you so far to a large extent, depending on the amount of loss that the producer is going to take and depending on how much other money you make them in the course of a year, will they tolerate a hit like that.
That is correct.
There is a bold highlighted sentence on page 5 of every contract we send out that says, low ticket sales are not force majeure. We have had to bring it up 3 or 4 times this year, and it is not fun. Once you get to that point with a buyer, everybody's unhappy. You know, there's not a winning moment. But for a buyer to say, this isn't going well, we're going to pull the plug without any, you know, any results or any consequences, it's not appropriate. Yes, a conversation is in order. Yes, we need to go into full marketing blast. Yes, we might have to cancel the show and figure out some sort of compensation that is equitable. But yeah, we have had to pull out the, please check page 5 of your contract. This email is not okay.
So what kind of solutions have you used in the past in those sort of cases?
What have we done?
So you said we need to find some sort of solution. What sort of
solutions involve just finding an equitable, maybe like keep 25% or keep 50% or cover your travel expenses. It's up to the artist at that point.
We just try to always rebook. I mean, we try never to exchange money that's already been exchanged. We try to reallocate it somewhere else to another date or something more equitable. Yeah.
That's a Canadian you. I mean, one thing that we've done, which was still pretty disastrous for that run, but it was a small promoter who would have basically been bankrupt if he had to have done those particular dates last year, was he just paid us like 3 days of hotel nights, and it was still $9,000 that he had to pay, but he would have lost like $90,000 or something like that, and that was like military presence in DC, sort of like one of those things where it was nobody's fault. But yeah, it's been a tough year for a lot of us, as all of you know.
That also leads the question to what do people normally use as a sort of kill fee? Do you ever work in those terms where if somebody calls you up and they want to cancel?
It's a conversation. It's just that conversation. It's always a conversation.
I mean, a guesstimate in my little arena of theater for young audiences is we usually sort of look at about 50%. If you don't want us to show up and we haven't spent anything on a hard cost and we're routed and we're driving right through your town and for whatever reason, if you want to give us 50% of the fee, we might, consider that done.
I'd say that factors that enter that conversation, if we're talking about money, which is the topic of the panel, what day of the week was it? Did we give up other work to have this job? Have we spent money on travel already? Was this a local show, a run out, or a fly date? There's all kinds of things. It just has to become a conversation to have an equitable, as least painful as possible result when a show is not going to happen. And even when, Tara, that we reallocate the money to a new show, there are still expenses, possible airfare that can't be rescheduled. It's just not an automatic, let's move the money over and pick a new day. Sometimes there's costs involved.
Fair. Kevin? Sorry, Spring.
Hey, I'm Jennifer Ross. I'm with Walton Arts Center in Fayetteville, Arkansas. On this question about cancellations, we've had 2 shows cancel right before Christmas. I mean, the agents called us and said, we're canceling, we need to cancel. And so the conversations worked because of our good relationships with the agents. And I think that is something that we sometimes forget to talk about. Is our relationships with one another, my relationships with the agents that I work with, my relationships within my own company so that I can explain why the hell I just canceled the show that we were going to lose money on anyway. But that's beside the point. But I really think having those hard conversations with a good relationship, hand in hand with your agent friends, makes it so much easy. easier. Because if you're a haint about it, they're going to charge you 100%. But if you call and apologize up front and try to have that conversation, that hard conversation, in the best way possible, then you might, as Tara says, get out of it with just a 50% hit. But be prepared. Don't call with no information. Have all of your expenses in front of you. Know what you've spent on it already so that the conversation can happen in an equitable manner.
On this Sunday morning, can we get an amen?
Amen.
I will second that by saying, when this conversation starts, stop emailing and call. Nothing good happens in print at this point. Pick up the phone, call this wonderful colleague that you have.
Absolutely.
Hello, I'm Trey Rochelle. I'm a self-represented artist. So I had the question, if you're a driven, self-represented artist, where's the money? Like, what is the profit for the ability to get like the most net profit? Like if you're driven, I will do commercial, like they may not cancel work, I might, right? And so I'm about to be an empty nester. I'm in corporate right now. I'm looking to set myself up and do all of the things and hop from being a self-represented to the agency and do all of that. So if you're driven, like what advice do you give to make the most profit now, to sow your seeds for you to continue to develop into the...
What genre do you present?
So I do storytelling, and I write music. So I can write for anything, and that's books and all of the things. And I do video editing for documentaries. So I'm driven and creative, right? So I'm here as an observer. This is my first time coming to the APAC because I'm trying to figure out what am I about to close and complete that's going to give me the most profit or have the best opportunity, right? So wherever it is, I will go and I will do that, and then I will come back and do the next thing and do that. So if you were giving advice to someone who's driven and creative.
I see so much in you, and driven is the biggest part of it, which is if you want it bad enough, any dream can come true. I remember when I first started in 2010 tap dancing my little buns off to get work, and I was like, that library wants to pay our duo $400 to come and tap dance for 90 minutes. What else was I gonna do today? Like, that's the kind of attitude I have. Somebody at that venue might go to the New Jersey community down the street, and then we have a $2,000 job, and that person goes on a cruise ship and requests us, and then we have a $6,000 job. I always say work brings work. Every relationship will surprise you. Gary back there with Blackburn International was a friend for 5 years casually before we needed him to come on board as helping us with cruise bookings. You just, all about relationships, keep working, mind your P's and Q's, mind your profits now, have budgets at the end of every gig, do a little audit, like what were my expenses, what was my income? I mean, those are the steps as a self-represented artist to really just like keep that engine moving forward and keep coming to events like this and make connections. That's my advice. It's subjective.
I have a quick follow-up from here.
Hi, Ron. Good to see you. Self-represented artist. Hi, I'm Gilad, by the way. Hello. Singer, band leader, all kind of different stuff. What are some blind spots that you always kind of notice with self-represented artists? Because we are all out there, and I'm actually super excited to hear a lot of what you're talking about, because there are some things that I have already implemented into my contracts, like first payment. But I would love to hear any kind of blind spots that you're seeing.
Some blind spots.
Blind spots, like stuff that like artists came to you who were not represented and came to you and you're like, you were doing it this way? Are you insane? You know, things that we should all keep in mind so we don't get screwed.
The hardest thing to cope with is self-deception perception. You know, I can sell 200 tickets in my hometown. How come I can't tour? Well, is that 200 tickets on a Saturday night and there's free tequila? Or is that 200 tickets? And a healthy ego is a good thing. And this kind of ties into what you're saying also. in your case, we can't, and when people join our company, or artists in particular, we can't teach you ambition. You can have the talent, you can have the skills, you can have, we can have the curiosity, but ambition is something we can't teach. I can teach you the agency business. Tell you the truth, it's not that hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to do it well. No, it's hard to do it well, but almost any idiot could book a band. But to have, you know, the degree of experience that you can play the chess game, you're going to play here, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. That's a skill that's acquired. And as far as the self-employed musician, local or band, you got to work locally first and then build it up. It's the same way it's been for a long time, except these days you don't need a label to come fund you. You can do it yourself. And keep doing what you're doing. You're taking action all the time, and that's what you do. You take action, let go of the results, and just go on.
I would say this is my secret weapon, and if you were at the Arts Northwest or WA version of this panel, you've already seen me pull it out. It's this. So I keep this in my wallet all the time. This is an IATA card. You can get an IATA card if you're a registered travel agent. You can become a travel agent for like $10 a month by applying to a host agency, and there are so many. If you type into the internet how to become a travel agent, you will get more information than you possibly could want. Why is this card important? This card allows me to have access to portals that are not the retail portals when I go to book hotels, when I go to book cars. If there is somebody on your artist team, or if you are just a solo self-represented artist and you are not a travel agent for yourself, you are missing at least 15% discount on every single thing you do, and sometimes close to 50. As a travel agent, you can commission your own travel. So even if you were to purchase that, you know, choice hotel in Waukegan, Illinois, for $100, you're going to get a check in the mail for $15 from your travel agent for booking that $100 hotel. If you are driving the car yourself, they have a travel agent rate that's 50% off. Somebody on your team has to be a travel agent. It's all online now. You don't have to have a brick and mortar store. Just this is the key. And you also get like a free ticket to Disney World every year. Free ticket to SeaWorld every year. So there are fun perks, but it costs almost nothing and it is invaluable. 50% off at Holiday Inn Expresses, 2 rooms. Yeah. 30 to 50% off. It's bonkers how much.
It's a good.
But this is an IATA card. So once you are a travel agent and you have generated a certain amount of income, you get a card that proves that you're a travel agent. IATA, it's the International Association of Travel Agents, I think is what it is.
Can we go to
IATA.
Spring?
Yes, Spring has had her hand up.
Hand up for about 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm just like the virtual queue here, but I'm going to pass it over to Karen Kennedy.
Thank you. Hi, you guys. My name is Karen Kennedy, and I have a couple of things to add. One is I am born and bred in California. It is the best state. Number two, when you're dealing with taxes, out of state tax, specifically with California, but also with Mass, you can apply in advance for a reduction in the out-of-state non-resident entertainment tax. And for California, it is up to 6% reduction, so it does make a difference. The second thing I wanted to address is just tips on travel. In addition to being a travel agent, if you can do that, if you don't, just remember when you're searching for your travel, whether you're using Expedia or Google Flights, make sure you put it on incognito first. Otherwise, every time you go back to look at those flights go up. Secondly, and now I forgot because it's been 15 minutes since I wanted to say this, join either United or Delta, or I don't know if American offers this, but they do offer a business account aside from your personal account that when I book on behalf of my clients, I book through the business portal, and I get points for every time I book. I can then turn those points into expenditures on behalf of my clients. And as I say, I know United has it, Delta has it, it's free, and it just means that every time you get an assigned number, every time you get, you make a reservation, and it can use on any of your clients, so.
Yeah, just a little bit more information about that. You guys know that when you book a flight, the person whose name is on the flight gets the miles. But if you have a Sky Miles for Business account or one of these other business accounts, which are all free, not only the person who's flying gets the miles, but then the booker gets the miles as well.
We've got a question here that's been waiting patiently.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marie. I'm a French producer, so sorry for my English. I work with a French musician, and in France or in Europe, one topic at the moment is how can we avoid one-shot gigs or shows? I mean, meaning sharing, creating smart touring. And I don't know how it works here because the country is much bigger than France and even Europe, of course, but it is important both economically and ecologically, and I haven't heard this word a lot here in APAP, sorry. And I think it's not, we've focused a lot on producers' responsibility to cut budgets, but I think there is also a presenter's responsibility or a shared in the ecosystem responsibility in creating this smart touring. What I mean is, for me, even in France, where I know well the network, it's hard to have more than just one gig, and it will be very helpful if the presenter I'm talking to will just hang up a call and call a colleague saying, look, I want to invite this artist. Won't you be interested and join me in the tour? And then I can create a smart tour and reduce travel costs, okay, by train, but I think this is important nowadays, and we are talking about that a lot in France and in Europe now, and again, I don't know how it works here, but I think we are all in the same boat, and we all have to work on this.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to jump in. One of the things that is the most utilizing, you've got your one gig, right? You want to look at those networks. You want to look at those presenters that have networks. One of the best things that we utilize is somebody like SwapUp or the regional booking networks. The presenters you're working with, they have friends that are presenters too. So looking for a champion within that state or within that kind of realm of area that you want to visit, we look for consortiums and ask for help from the people that are already booking you.
So the United States has a lot of consortia. So like the groups that work together regionally, there are a lot of them here. I think I saw Shane Fernando over there somewhere. Shane, are you still here? Okay. So the easiest question is when you have one show, the easiest question is to ask, who do you usually route with, right? And then oftentimes, if you work with, especially the performing arts centers and the theaters, they're oftentimes members of certain organizations like the North Carolina Presenters Consortium, the Georgia Presenters, the Tennessee Presenters, and then it's not just North Carolina. North Carolina works together with South Carolina. They have presenters from Georgia in it. They have presenters from Tennessee, even from Kentucky. And a lot of these people have a network, they meet together, they jump on calls together. So all of this is an infrastructure that does exist. You just have to just be in the industry for a while for you to actually see through this system, and then being at conferences like this one, and being at the more regional conferences like MAX, like WA, to actually at a certain point realize who works with who and what these networks are. And all of these routings and all of these meetings are around, and these people do work together. It just takes a few seasons and a few years to find your people and to realize who works with who. But it's not something that's not around. It's just something that you might not be aware of at this time. But Mojo, who's sitting next to you, is a great mentor for that. He was my mentor for many years and still is. He can introduce you to some people. Sorry, Mojo, I put you on the spot, but I know that you're very helpful.
I'm going to get real tangible and talk to you about it on a U.S. domestic point of view, and then I'd love Tara to chime in as to what happens in Canada in this. When you get a juried showcase at Arts Northwest or at Montana, the presenters get together after the juried showcase and meet in rooms and help you create those tours. So those particular regional conferences are incredible ways to get more than just one-off shows. Once you book one show in the Northwest, and if you're a member of Arts Northwest, you can then submit your shows to Kyle, who runs Arts Northwest, and he will send an email to everybody who's a member of Arts Northwest saying, this incredible French artist has a show in Bellingham, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and Eugene, Oregon. Would you like to jump on? So as they said, it isn't so important to start to become members of these consortia. North Carolina has an incredible listserv where you can write an email and it goes to every North Carolina presenter once you've booked a show. Concert, the Consortium of Eastern Regional Theaters, does the same thing in the Northeast. All of these different consortia it's their entire jobs to help you do exactly what you're talking about. And then also an agent, that's their job. So looking for representation and having an agent leverage their relationships to get you follow-up dates from a one-off. Because yes, it's all about why are we giving all of our money to airlines, cars, and hotels? The money's supposed to go in your pocket. You want to have as many shows in a row as possible to amortize your expenses. How does it work in Canada?
Well, it's a little different in Canada, and I'm just going to say, come talk to me if you want to know more about block booking in Canada. We've got quite a big country, and it's unique in different provinces. So I want to pass over to Spring because she's had her hand up for a while.
Sorry, we just have more questions coming from our audience.
Hi, thank you. My name is Romain Greco. I am from Mexico, Mexican producer. I have an outdoor project for public spaces. I just have one question. I hope it was not raised already because I arrived a bit late because I forgot my badge. But the question is, I already have been touring in a couple of cities, and I've been able to convince the venue that they don't have to deduce anything from the fee because they are going to pay directly to my company in Mexico, and I'm paying my taxes in Mexico. So far, everybody agrees with that, but I just want to make sure this is the right way, that they don't have to deduce anything because they are paying directly to my producing company in Mexico, and I do all my spending in Mexico, and I pay my taxes in Mexico.
You are outside of my knowledge realm because we represent no international artists. The concept of foreign artist withholding is soups complicated, and maybe Tara can help.
Well, it works differently. It works a little differently in Canada. I mean, you come into the country, you don't need a visa. It's very different, for a foreign artist coming into the U.S. where you need the visa, and that's a big expense. And we used to be able to apply for visas to work within the U.S. On our own, and that's no longer the case. We're looking at always using lawyers now to streamline that process, and it is getting quite expensive. It used to, you could do it on your own for maybe a few $1,000s. Now it's upwards of $5,000.
To answer his question, if you do not have a U.S. entity or an EIN or Social Security number of your own, you have to have some sort of entity in the U.S. that holds money, no?
Yes, we have a lot of foreign clients from all over the world, and if you don't have that entity, you're taxed at 30% withholding of the gross, and which you used to be able to, nobody paid attention to that much 20 years ago, but now they quite do. And the IRS and the Immigration Service and the Visa Service all talk to each other, and they have for quite some time, to the point where 10 years ago, you would bring in a $1,000 band from Ireland to the UK or Jamaica, and the venues would get notifications from the IRS to withhold 30% of the gross. Now, it's a tax credit. They're not just stealing it, we hope. And the way to get around that is to get something, to minimize it, is to have a central withholding agreement, a CWA, which you file ahead of time, and again, similar to what you do in Canada to lower your tax liabilities, you provide the cost, your expenses.
It's a waiver, yeah.
And hopefully get taxed on the net, not the gross.
And here's our third plug to join NAPAMA.
But they're touchy about it. They're very touchy about it.
Our third plug to join NAPAMA is we have a whole hour or hour and a half long webinar about CWAs. and what your responsibility is as a foreign artist and how to either avoid or reduce or do it correctly at least that 30% tax withholding. So we don't have an answer, talk to a tax professional, but I know there's an APAMA webinar on the topic.
I know you over there, you've had your hand up for quite some time, and we have 4 minutes, 40 seconds left, so.
And I've already got a mic right here. Okay. Quickly. Yep.
Hi, Lindsay Anderson, self-represented artist. At the beginning, you spoke to trends in consumer demand going more commercial or less appetite for experimental or emerging or intellectual. I just wanted your insights as you're all in the industry on emerging trends right now. What's putting butts in seats?
I can only speak to, I was in New York City on 9/11. And I noticed that immediately after 9/11 happened in New York City, the Broadway shows that flourished were shows like 42nd Street, tap dancing spectacles, easy breezy, light, comfortable sing-along shows. I think everything goes in waves and pendulums. I think right now we feel tension, we feel stress, we feel confusion.
We're looking for comfort.
We're looking for comfort. So we are finding more people turning to tribute or tribute-adjacent material, artists who do songs that people know already, dramatic pieces that provide comfort and maybe are less challenging. Not across the board, but just a trend. I will say one interesting thing from an agent's perspective is it has been difficult for us to find artists that are ready to onboard. And I think it maybe is because that gestative period during the pandemic, like people just kind of stopped making new things for a little while. We're still feeling the reverberations of that, and that we just feel like there's less artists to talk to bring on board that there were 5 or 6 years ago. That's just my 2 cents.
Hi. This is going back to the tax. You made a very good point about the out-of-state. So here's my question. Agency, and I want to understand the process correctly. Agency collects the money, yet use the artist EIN. But do you give a 1099 based on what our net is collected after paid fees instead of the gross fee?
We do not. So what we do is the venue, we're pretending the job is $10,000. $5,000 first payment, $5,000 balance. First check, $5,000 written to Epic Arts Management, $5,000 minus 15% is passed on to you. Balance check, $5,000 mailed to Epic Arts Management, $5,000 minus 15% is passed on to you. At the end of the year, venue 1099s you for $10,000. You write off $1,500 as a business expense, commission to agency.
Okay.
Okay.
I think.
Last question.
Yeah, last question right over here.
Thank you. Matthew, I am a presenter from the Pittsburgh area. I feel like there's a lot of presenter versus artists versus agents. Like we're not working together in a lot of ways. Right now, like my attendance is down 20%. So my question is, just as a panel, how can we work together to lower ticket prices, because that's one thing I've seen is ticket prices on the rise and nonstop. Another thing is we're trying to push a lot of the payment to the actual audience. So it's one of those things where how can we work together instead of 3 separate entities as one group to try to get more butts in seats, because obviously that's what we're trying to do is get more butts in seats to see shows as a group. And I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts or maybe that's just something to work forward to actually work together as one entity instead of 3 separate verses.
We talk about it at NAPAMA all the time, that siloing isn't good for anybody. That's why it's so great to have presenter members in NAPAMA, because then we sit at tables, and it's great because things like the retreat that we're having in Tucson are no work zones, so we just got to sit around and be friends and like go to the beach, and no beach in Tucson, but
we tried.
There'll be other stuff, I promise. But that whole, like, you are saying something so valuable and important, which is nobody's on any side here. We all have the same goal, which is to do art and have people see art. I think starting every conversation with that goal and that vision in mind even the tone of an email. We're so excited to share our artists with your audience. What's the best way we can do that? What's an equitable fee? The terminology, the verbiage that we're using, all of it's so important. We started this whole panel sort of talking about the trends that we're seeing, that many of our buyer partners are looking to pass some of that responsibility back onto the artist in terms of getting more butts in seats, even if it's a flat fee guarantee. So we do things like when we send our executed contract, for some of our artists, there's a little paragraph that says, collaborative social media marketing opportunity. If you'd like to share some of your marketing budget with this artist, they have shown tangibly that they can get butts in your seats people that you haven't reached in your community yet, people that you don't know. So let's share all the funds and work and make this magical together. I think what you're saying is very important, and I don't think there are answers that we're going to be able to tackle today. But yes, I think in everything we do, from the emails that we write, the conversations that we have, the attitude we take, we have to reduce siloing.
So I think your knee-jerk reaction of just lowering the ticket prices is, yes, the issue is ticket prices, because that is one of the reasons why people are not coming. However, touring expenses have risen, so we can't, the artists still need to make money. So that's not really the way to go, but what we can do to get butts in seats is from the very, very, very beginning, after we accepted the offer, once we go on sale, or even prior to going on sale, what all agents really need to do and what all the self-represented artists really need to do is from the very early stages on work on marketing these shows together. Because what so many people don't do is work together with the venues on the marketing. Get the marketing plans, work on the marketing plans together, do some grassroots marketing, work their social media, and not just fall asleep, don't pay attention until it's 3 weeks out and the show isn't selling. We need to actually work together with the venues and collaborate on selling these shows, because that is, I feel, one of the biggest issues that we're facing in the industry, that so many people are just simply not paying attention to their shows until the promoter calls and says, this show is not selling, I want to cancel. And that's when it's already too late.
And we don't look at it as versus. It has to be a collaborative effort on everybody's part. And if you're getting that sense and the feeling that it is an antagonistic relationship, just don't take WME's calls.
So speaking of collaboration, there are postcards on the tables out here about our NAPAMA retreat in Tucson. That's when we meet once a year. It's a wonderful experience where the whole NAPAMA community meets. We have some sessions, we have some great drinks, dinners, happy hours, events that we're doing. It's absolutely wonderful. Take a card, take a look. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.